So today's daf is Ayin Gimel, and we're going to start on Ayin Bet Amud Bet at the bottom of the page where it says Be'elu Nishalin Burim V'Tumim. So this is going to start out discussing the Bigdei Kehuna and their application to a specific case, which is what's called the Mashuach Milchama. Mashuach Milchama is the Kohen that was specifically designated. He was anointed just like the Kohen Gadol, but he was anointed to go out to war with the troops. Right? We know about this from the Torah. So he also had a distinction above other Kohanim. And the Talmud is going to try to figure out, the Gemara tries to figure out exactly what the parameters of that are. So, Kiyata Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came in from Israel, he said, Begadim shekohen gadol mishamesh ben, Moshoach milchama mishamesh ben. That the same 8 begadim, because our Mishnah described the difference between the Kohen, a regular Kohen, and Kohen Gadol. Regular Kohen has 4 begadim. Kohen Gadol has 8 begadim, which include the Urim V'Tumim, that they would ask questions, which is how we got onto the subject. So Mashuach Milchama, what category does he fit into? So the Gemara says, Rav Dimi says, he fits into the category of Kohen Gadol. If he wants to serve, we're down here. If he wants to serve in the Bet HaMikdash to bring korbanot, he's not allowed to wear just the 4 begadim of a regular Kohen. He must wear the 8 begadim of the Kohen Gadol. How do we know that? Shenemar, as it says, it says that the clothing that belonged to Aharon should be for his children after him. And the Gemara explains, what does it mean, lebanav acharav? It should be for his children after him, for those of his children who follow him, who follow in his greatness. So just like being the Kohen Gadol is a type of greatness, is a type of superiority, so too is being the Mashuach Milchama, being the one who's anointed for going out with the troops, is a type of distinction and specificity that goes beyond being an ordinary Kohen. So then the Gemara says, Mativ Rav Adabara Hava Rav Adabara Hava objected va'amri la kedi, and some say kedi. Kedi is either a person or means it was stated anonymously. Yachol yehe beno shel mashuach milchama mishamesh tahtav kederech shebeno shel kohen gadol mishamesh tahtav. We generally have a rule that the Kohen Gadol should be succeeded by his son. If his son is worthy of the post, he should take over after his father. So you might think that the same would apply to the Mashuach Milchama. That if I am so let's say, it's not really the same concept, but let's say that I'm I'm the, what do they call it? The rabbi that goes out with the troops, I'm forgetting the word, but if you're the Kohen Gadol who goes out with the troops, that somehow this means that you're a military man, and your son should take over after you, right? The chaplain is the word I'm looking for, right? So therefore, you might think the same. So Talmud Amar, as you turn to Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, Talmud Amar Shivat Yamim Yilvasham HaKohen Tahtav Mibanav V'Sher Yavo El Oel Moed. That 7 days. This is talking about how just like the Kohen Gadol was anointed and he was installed in the Miluim, he was installed, as we spoke about many times. 7 days. That in the future, when a future Kohen Gadol is installed, it should also be 7 days. The Kohen who takes over for the current Kohen Gadol will wear the garments for 7 days. But it says, who will do it? Asher Yavo El Oel Moed, the one who's going to come into Oel Moed. In other words, the Mashuach Milchama, the Kohen who is designated for going out with the troops, his son doesn't take over after him. There's no concept of Yerusha. There's no concept of passing on from one to the next. However, when it comes to the Kohen Gadol, the one who's going to go in Oel Moed after him, in other words, the one who's going to take over as a Kohen Gadol does inherit his father if he's worthy of taking the position. And if you're going to tell me, in other words, that the Kohen Kohen Mashiach also wears the Bigdei Kehuna, he wears the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol. The Mashuach, the same thing. In other words, if he's equivalent to the Kohen Gadol in many ways, because the Kohen who is designated to go out with the troops also wears the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol, so why doesn't his son also take over after him? So the answer is, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Achika Amar. This is what it means, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Kol she'ikar meshichato le'oel moed. Because what does the pasuk say? The one who inherits him to go into the the Oil Moed. The main reason why he was designated was to go into the Mishkan. Which is different than the Mashuach Milchama, because the Kohen who's designated, even though he's a special Kohen who's designated to go out with the troops, isn't special because of a way that he goes into the Beit HaMikdash that's special, right? The Kohen Gadol is special because he gets to go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, not because he gets to go out to war. So they're fundamentally different. So who passes their kahuna onto their children? The Kohen who's anointed in order to go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim. In other words, the one who is distinguished in the way he serves in the Mishkan, not a Kohen who's distinguished in some other respect.
But there's like distinction for the.
But he's still distinguished that if he does come into the Beit HaMikdash, he would wear the 8 begadim. But that doesn't mean that he would pass it on to his children, right? Maybe there is an objection. Mashuach Milchama ino mishamesh ela lo ba'arba'at kohen hediot velo b'shmona kekohen gadol. There's actually a braita that says that, you know what, the Mashuach Milchama, that chaplain kohen who goes out to the war, he is not allowed to wear the 4 begadim and he's not allowed to wear the 8. In other words, he can't wear the 4. We know why. Why not? Because since he's distinguished, wearing the 4 is insufficient. Just like if the kohen gadol wears only the 4, it's insufficient. It's called mechusar begadim. He's lacking clothing. He can't do that. So, but he also can't wear the 8. What's the reason? Amar le Abaye. Abaye said, Elazar mishavet le. You are making him into a non-Kohen. You're making him a zar. You're saying he's not a Kohen. He can't serve as in the 4. He can't serve in the 8. How could that be? Rather, the Gemara answers, it's not because he's not a Kohen anymore. Ela ki Kohen gadol mishum eva ki Kohen hediot mishum alin bakodesh velo moridin. The problem is that he can't wear the 8 begadim of the Kohen gadol. Why? Really, he should wear the 8 begadim of the Kohen gadol. Really, that's what he should do. But he can't. Why not? Because the Kohen gadol is going to say, who is this guy? Hey, I'm the Kohen gadol. Why is he wearing my clothes? You know, why is he wearing my uniform? That's not right. So it's Eva. He's going to be upset. And he can't wear the 4 begadim. Why? Because he's not on that. He's on a higher level. The Kohen Mashiach, the Mashuach Milchama, I mean, the one who is designated for war is on a higher level. So it would be lowering him to wear the 4, but wearing the 8, the Kohen Gadol is going to say, who is this pipsqueak? You know, he's wearing my clothes. It's not right. So therefore he's caught in the middle. What? The Mashuach Milchama? Probably the Sanhedrin, I assume. So Amar le Rav Ada bar Abba le Rava. Rav Ada bar Abba said to Rava, V'hai tana delet le'eva v'lo kam mishamesh. But here's a tana reflected in the following braita, who isn't concerned about Eva. He's not concerned about the feelings of competition between the Kohen Gadol and other Kohanim, and yet he still says that the Mashuach Milchama should not wear the 8 garments. Where do we see that? Tanya, as it says in a braita, Dvarim sheben Kohen Gadol leKohen Hediot. The following things are what distinguish a regular Kohen from the Kohen Gadol. Par Kohen Mashiach u par Baal Kol HaMitzvot. Rashi says, and on the side the Gra also says that this is the same thing twice. That we learn that there's a special mitzvah that if the Kohen Gadol makes a halachic ruling which is incorrect, and then he ends up following it and doing an avera, he has to bring a special par. He has to bring a special korban the rest of the year. That's only the Kohen Gadol, not an ordinary Kohen. Upar Yoma Kippurim, and of course the Kohen Gadol has to bring a special bowl on Yom Kippur. V'asiri taifa. Every day there's a tenth of an ephah that he brings, half in the morning and half in the evening. The Kohen Gadol brings every single day. So that's something unique to the Kohen Gadol. And lo porea v'lo porem. If he's in mourning, he doesn't let his hair grow long and he doesn't tear his garments. Aval poremhu milimata. What he does is, if one of his immediate relatives dies, he tears towards the bottom of his clothing, not the top, so it doesn't show. Whereas v'hayediot milmala, but the regular Kohen, he does kriya in the normal way, right? Because if a regular Kohen, if his immediate relative dies, he observes mourning normally. It's only everyone else he's not allowed to go to their funeral. Ve'en mitameh lekerovav, and the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to become tameh even for his immediate relatives. Tzuveh ala betula, and he's only allowed to marry a virgin, whereas a regular Kohen could marry, let's say, an almana, a widow. Umahzir umuzara la'almana. The Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. Umahzir et harotzeach. And when he dies, he releases all of the murderers. Right? We know that anybody who kills unintentionally, he kills accidentally. So he's sent to the Ir Miklat. He's sent to the city of refuge. And how long? What's the sentence in the city of refuge? It's not 20 years to life. It's until the Kohen Gadol dies. When the Kohen Gadol dies, he releases everyone who was in the Ir Miklat. But that's only the Kohen Gadol, not just any Kohen.
A regular Kohen can marry
a widow, just not a divorcee. Right.
A widow whose husband was Kohen.
That's only what it says in Yechezkel. But the halacha is any widow. Yeah. Well, as long as she wasn't married to a non-Jew. If she's married to a non-Jew, okay. So, umakriv onen ve'eno ochel. The Kohen Gadol has a unique rule. Any other Kohen, if he's in onen, which means that his relative died that day, he's not allowed to bring a korban at all. But the Kohen Gadol is makriv onen ve'eno ochel. That means he can bring a korban even when he's in onen, on the day that his relative died, but he cannot eat it. Okay, ve'eno cholek. Okay, and he doesn't divide up. And what does that mean? Right, that's the case of the he's makriv onen ve'eno ochel. You're talking about that is the famous case. That's right. And the ve'eno cholek means that when he comes in the evening, in other words, if he did offer something that day, and on the day that his relative died, he's not allowed to eat it, and even in the evening afterwards, he's not allowed to eat it. Right? He's not allowed to partake. Ve'notel haylek barosh. He's the first to take a portion. If there's a korban, he gets to take the first portion. Umakriv haylek barosh. And if he wants to offer a certain korban, he can push everybody aside. You want to offer today? You're out. I'm taking over. I'm the Kohen Gadol. I'm pulling rank. He's allowed to pull rank whenever he wants. And and he has to serve in the 8 garments. Upatur al tumat mikdash v'kodashav. And he's also exempt on tumat mikdash v'kodashav, meaning to say that if he accidentally violates the rules of tum'ah, in other words, he enters the Beit HaMikdash b'tum'ah, or some other violation, some other infraction, he doesn't have to bring the special korban for that. Okay, the Kohen Gadol is exempt from that. And all the services of Yom Kippur are only kasher through the Kohen Gadol. And all of these laws apply similarly to the merubeh begadim. What's a merubeh begadim? Because in the ancient times they used to choose the Kohen Gadol, and he would be anointed with the special oil. But in later times they no longer had the special oil of Moshe Rabbeinu. So what did they do? They made you the Kohen Gadol by having you wear the begadim. By wearing the uniform, you became the Kohen Gadol. So merubeh begadim is the same. In other words, that it doesn't matter how the Kohen Gadol is installed, whether he's installed by the application of oil or he's installed by wearing the begadim. Either way, he's the Kohen Gadol, except for one or two differences that distinguish him. What are they? Chutz mipara ba'al kol mitzvot. Oh, it's one, right? Mipara ba'al kol mitzvot, except for the para ba'al kol mitzvot, which is that if he makes a halachic ruling and it's incorrect and he follows it and he does an avera as a result, he transgresses as a result of his own incorrect halachic ruling, he doesn't have to bring the para ba'al kol mitzvot, because it emphasizes that the Kohen HaMashiach, that it's only the Kohen who was anointed who has that rule. So in every other respect, he is the Kohen Gadol, except that if he does this violation, he wouldn't bring the Parha Bal Kol HaMitzvot.
So that stopped that practice?
That stopped when they no longer anointed Kohanim Gedolim. Yeah. Vechulan noagot b'mashuach she'avar. And all of the same rules apply to a Kohen Gadol who retired. In other words, a Kohen Gadol who was retired or developed a blemish and is no longer the Kohen Gadol. Still, all of the rules apply to him, except for, chutz mipar Yom Kippurim, except obviously he doesn't bring the bull on Yom Kippur, because you would have two of them. You would have the current Kohen Gadol, and also every previous Kohen Gadol would have to come back and do it again. V'asiri taifa, and obviously the previous Kohen Gadol, even if he's still alive, doesn't bring the 10th of an ephah every day. That's only one. That's only for the acting Kohen Gadol to do on a daily basis, not for everyone. Vechulan en noagot b'mashuach milchama, and and none of the rules of the Kohen Gadol apply to the Mashuach Milchama except for 5 things. Okay? So in other words, we're having different levels here. We have Kohen Gadol who was anointed, Kohen Gadol who wasn't anointed, Kohen Gadol who retired, okay? And now we have Mashuach Milchama, the Kohen who was anointed for the purposes of going out with the troops, except for 5 rules that are unique to him, Amurin beParasha, that are stated in the parasha, namely, Lo Porea velo Porem, the Mashuach Milchama doesn't let his hair grow long for mourning, and he doesn't tear his garment, Velo Mitameh leKerovav, and he doesn't become tameh for his relatives, even his immediate relatives, Umtzuveh ala Bitula, he has to marry a virgin, Umuzar ala Almana, and he's not allowed to marry a widow, Umachzir et harotzeach, Kedivrei Rabbi Yehuda, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, he also is Machzir et harotzeach, he's also Machzir et harotzeach, he also returns the murderer. In other words, if he dies, all of the killers who were in the Ir Miklat, all of the killers who were in the city of refuge, are released to go home. So those are the 5 things where the Mashuach Milchama is similar to Kohen Gadol, even though he himself is not a Kohen Gadol. He's similar to the Kohen Gadol. Okay, the Chachamim agree with everything except Eno Mahzir. If he dies, he doesn't release the people from the Ir Miklat. Okay, but he's not allowed to become Tameh. He's not allowed to marry a non-virgin, and so on and so forth. Even though he's not the Kohen Gadol, he has certain distinction to him. So what does that show you? That shows you that the so what's the relevance of bringing this Braita? What the relevance of bringing this Braita is that what it's trying to show that Rashi says Alma Haitana Litle Eva. We see that this Tana is not concerned about feelings of jealousy. That he says that, what do you see from here? It says that all the rules of the Kohen Gadol apply to the retired Kohen Gadol. Okay? But if that's the case, that means that if the retired Kohen Gadol wakes up one morning and says, you know what, I'd really like to come offer my own korban. What does he wear? Does he wear the 4 garments or does he wear the 8 garments? He has to wear the 8 garments because he's considered like a Kohen Gadol. But wait a second, you told me that the Kohen Gadol is going to be jealous. He's going to say, hey, I'm the Kohen Gadol. Why are you wearing the outfit of the Kohen Gadol? You're not supposed to be doing that. So therefore we see from this Mishnah or this Braita that we're not concerned about the jealousy factor, even though there were basically 2 Kohanim Gedolim functioning. They're 2 alive, like the 2 popes that they have now, the Havdil, right? You have 2. So we're not worried about the jealousy factor. And yet, does it say that the Mashuach Milchama is going to wear the 8 garments when he serves? No. It doesn't say that. It says there are only 5 things that the Mashuach Milchama has in common with the Kohen Gadol, and wearing the garments is not one of them. So you see that even though we're apparently not concerned about jealousy between Kohanim Gedolim, we still are saying that the Mashuach Milchama should not wear the 8 garments. So the Gemara answers, there's a difference. Why? Ki let le'eva b'dechvate b'dezutar mineh itle. There's a difference. Because when is he not jealous? When it's somebody of his own rank. In other words, I know, a president understands that the former president who's still alive gets respect of the office, right? So the Kohen Gadol says, listen, I understand my predecessor, the previous Kohen Gadol, he gets kavod just like I get kavod. We're on the same level. In a way, his kavod is my kavod because, he's a retired version of me, right? They're on the same level. But the Mashuach Milchama, he's a totally different. Who is this guy? He goes out with the troops, he's a chaplain, so all of a sudden he's a Kohen Gadol? There's going to be some resentment. And therefore we say he shouldn't wear the 8 garments because of the resentment factor. It makes sense. Yativ Rabbi Abahu was sitting, V'kamar la shimata mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Abahu told over this teaching in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, this teaching of Rav Dimi, that the Mashuach Milchama wears 8 garments when he serves. And what happens? When he told it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ahadrinu Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi la'apayu. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi turned their backs to him. Meaning, we don't accept that as a valid teaching of Rabbi Yochanan. He never said that. Okay? He never said that. The Mashuach Milchama does not serve in 8 garments, they held. Right? That's what they held. They said that Rabbi Yochanan never said that. Ika de Amre, some say Rabbi Chaya bar Abba Amara, that Rabbi Chaya bar Abba was the one who said it. Ve'ahadrinu Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi la'apayu, and Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi turned their backs. In other words, that it was actually Rabbi Chaya bar Abba who reported it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi turned their backs, meaning we don't agree. Matkifla Rav Papa. Rav Papa raised an objection to these two reports. Bishlama Rabbi Abahu mishum yekara de bekesar el Rabbi Chaya bar Abba nemru le memar. So lo amar Rabbi Yohanan achi. So Rav Papa says, I don't think that the second version is valid. Why not? Because we understand why, if Rabbi Abahu said a teaching, that Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi wouldn't be able to contradict him. Why not? Because Rabbi Abahu was a big shot in the court of the Caesar. Okay? So therefore, nope, you can't say something rude. You can't directly say to him, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. Because he's a government official, you don't mess with the government official, right? But if it were really Rabbi Chaya bar Abba, why would they turn their back to him? Why wouldn't they just say, "Excuse me, Rabbi Yohanan never said that. You're incorrect." They can contradict him. What's the fear? So therefore, what do you see from this? You see that it's more likely that it was really Rabbi Abahu that reported it, and that's why they didn't say anything to him, because if it were Rabbi Chaya bar Abba, they would have argued with him. They wouldn't have turned their backs. The fact that they turned their backs means it was probably Rabbi Abahu, and they didn't feel that they had the clout, or they didn't want to infringe upon his kavod. So in any case, ki ata Ravin, when Ravin came, Amar, he said, Nish'al itmar. This had nothing to do. In other words, Rashi explains, Lav mishamesh bahen itmar ela nishal bahen itmar. It doesn't say that the kohen, that is the mashuach milchama, wears the 8 vestments in order to serve in the Beit HaMikdash, but Rashi says that it means the Mashuach Milchama is Nish'al. In other words, he can wear the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol in order to use the Urim V'Tumim. The Urim V'Tumim was the way that they would get the divine communications when they wanted to ask a question. So he doesn't wear those 8 garments to serve. Right? Why doesn't he wear the 8 garments to serve? Because we learned that because of issues of Eva, issues of conflict, so societal conflict, or between the two. So we don't want to create any kinds of problems between the two. So we don't accept the ruling of Rav Dimi that he would in fact wear the 8 garments to serve, because we don't allow him to serve at all. He's right in theory that those are the garments he would wear to serve, but we don't allow him to serve. But what could he do? He could wear the 8 garments in order to ask the Urim V'Tumim a question. That's why it says Nish'al Bahen.
That means at any given time you could have 2 Kohen Gadol.
Well, you could have more than one person using the Bigdei Kehuna. That's right. So Itmar. I'm sorry. Nish'al Itmar. This was said about questioning. Tani Rami Hachi. We learned similarly in a Baraita. Bigadim sheKohen Gadol Mishamesh Ben Mashuach Milchama Nishal Ben. That the same bigadim that the Kohen Gadol wears, the Mashuach Milchama will wear in order to ask the Urim V'Tumim a question when they go out to war, because they would ask the Urim V'Tumim, should we go this way? Should we go that way? Should we attack this or that? And they would say yes or no when they were out at war. So the Kohen Mashuach, the Mashuach Milchama would bring it.
Would bring it?
They would bring the clothes and put them on in order to ask the Urim V'Tumim questions while they're out there. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Ketzat Shoalin. So it says in the Braita, how did they ask the Urim V'Tumim? Hashoel panav klapei nishal. The person who was asking the question faced the person he was asking. In other words, he faced the Kohen Gadol. And v'nishal panav klapei Shechina. And the face of the one being asked, meaning the Kohen Gadol, or in this case the Mashuach Milchama, would be facing the Shekhinah, would be facing the divine presence, which either means he was facing down towards the Choshen, in other words, he was looking down at the breastplate to see the answer, or it means he was facing towards the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Whatever the case may be, depending on how you interpret it. And then what would happen? V'hashoel omer, the one asking the question would say, and this is just quoting a pasuk where from the Navi, from Sefer Shemuel, where they actually asked the Urim V'Tumim something. So they're just using it as an example, right? So the questioner would say, for instance, Erdof acharei gedud hazeh, should I chase after this band of people? In other words, should I chase after this army or not? And what would happen? Vanishal Omer, and the questioned one would say, Ko Amar Hashem, Alev Hatzlach, go up and be successful. Right? So in other words, he would give the answer to the person who asked. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, Ein tzarich lomar Ko Amar Hashem. He doesn't have to say, so says Hashem. Ela Alev Hatzlach. In other words, according to the first opinion, he would say, Ko Amar Hashem. So says Hashem. This is what you should do. According to the second, he would be saying it. The Kohen Gadol. He would get the answer from the iPad there that he had, right? And then he would say, Ko Amar Hashem Alev Hatzlach. That according to the first version, he would say, so says Hashem, go up and be successful. Rabbi Yehuda says he doesn't have to say Ko Amar Hashem. He just has to say, go up and be successful, because everyone knows he's speaking on behalf of God. En shoalin bakol. You don't ask the question out loud. Shenemar v'sha'al lo because it says he asks for himself. V'sha'alo. In other words, you say it to yourself. Nor should you say it in your heart, because it says he asks lifnei Hashem, before Hashem. So there has to be some action. But rather the same way that Chana prayed, that Chana would speak, she was mumbling to herself. In other words, whispering. The way you say Shemona Esrei, the Shemona Esrei, you whisper to yourself. You don't say it out loud so that everyone hears, and you don't. Right, you move your lips, and so nobody else can hear, but you can hear. Okay, so that's how it would be done, like tefillah. And you don't ask two questions at once, one at a time. And if you ask two, you're only going to get one answer. Okay, so and if he does, and if he asks two things, it's only going to answer the first question, not the second one. Shenemar, as it says, Hayaskiruni Ba'ale Ke'ila Biyado Hayered Shaul. Like when David HaMelech was on the run from Shaul, he asked two questions to the Urim V'Tumim. Number one, he said, are the people of Ke'ilah, amongst whom he was hiding, are they going to hand me over when Shaul... you never know when you take refuge somewhere. If you have asylum somewhere, maybe they're going to hand you over, right? So he said, are the people of Ke'ilah going to hand me over, number one? And is Shaul going to come down after me? So, and what happens? Vayomer Hashem said, now he asked the Urim V'Tumim. And what did Hashem say? Yered, he will come down. But wait a second. He asked two questions. Will they hand me over, and will Shaul come down? And you said, if I ask two questions, I'm going to get answered for the first one. But what did he answer him? The second one. Because the second question was, is Shaul going to come down? Didn't you just tell me he's going to answer? So which one should he have answered? He should have answered whether they're going to hand me over or not.
Yeah, but logically, he should have asked
exactly what the Gemara says. See, he should have been one of the Amoraim. It's exactly right. David sha'al shelo kaseder. It was David's mistake. He asked the wrong order. Because obviously the first question is Shaul going to come after me? And then, are they going to hand me over? And ubechziro lo kaseder. So what was answered was the question that should have been first, not necessarily the question that was first. Exactly what you thought. The kevan she had. It actually is. It's a very logical answer. I don't think it's so forced. It's a very smooth, logical answer. The kevan she had sha'al shelo kaseder chazar v'shal kaseder. And after he realized that he had not asked in order, because he only got an answer to whether Shaul was going to come down. He still didn't know whether the people of Ke'ilah were going to hand him over, right? So he again asked, Kaseder shenemar hayasgiru b'alei Ke'ilah oti v'yad anashai b'yad Shaul. So then he asked again, are the people of Ke'ilah going to hand me and my people over in the hands of Shaul? So that's why he got the answer to that. And of course, Vayomer Hashem, yasgiru. And Hashem said, yes, they are, don't trust them. And that's why he ran away. And if it's a type of question where two are necessary, in other words, where the two questions are interrelated so fundamentally that they need to both be answered, then he'll get two answers. Shenemar, as we see, Vayishal David Bashem Lemor, ha'erdof acharei hagedud hazeh ha'asigeno. Like David asked Hashem, should I chase after this group? Will I catch them? In other words, it's really the same question. If I'm not going to catch them, why would I bother chasing them? I don't need the exercise. I can run a marathon. Right, exactly. In that case, they're connected. And so Hashem answered, "Vayomer lo redov ki asek tasig, vatzil tatzil." So Hashem said, "Run after them because you're going to catch them and save." In other words, the whole since he was not asking two different things, he was asking. Will the goal of catching them be successful? And if not, I'm not going to bother, right? So it's all related, and that's why it was really considered to be one question. Even though sometimes what a Navi proclaims can be changed. For example, Rashi says, Yonah ben Amitai, Yonah tells the people of Nineveh, this place is going to be overturned, and of course it isn't. Gezerat Urim V'Tumim ina chozeret. Whatever the Urim V'Tumim says, it's not going to be reversed. Shene'emar, as it says, b'mishpat ha'urim. It says by the judgment of the Urim. Lama nikra sheman Urim V'Tumim. Why are they called Urim V'Tumim? Urim sheme'irin et divrehen. Urim because they light up their words. Rashi says mifarashin et divrehen. They make their words explicit. Tumim shemashlimin et divrehen. Tumim means to end or to complete, meaning that whatever they say goes. Whatever the Urim V'Tumim says, it's going to happen. Ve'im tomar, and maybe you'll ask, V'givat binyamin b'pnei ma lo hishlimu. Why is it that when the Urim V'Tumim answered the people, when the people went in the whole story of Pilegish B'Giv'ah, which is a tragic story in Jewish history, and in the book of Shofatim, very terrible story, all the Shevatim end up going to war against Shevet Binyamin because Shevet Binyamin has become so immoral, it's become like Sodom. It's a terrible, terrible story. But they all go to war against them. And they ask the Urim V'Tumim twice, should we go out to war against the Bnei Binyamin? And twice, yes, you should go. And twice, they're beaten. Bnei Binyamin, one Shevet beat everybody. Right? The first 2 times, they inflicted serious casualties on the entire Jewish people, even though they were one Shevet against everyone else. And there's a whole discussion. Why was it that they suffered? Why did they suffer and lost in the first 2 times? But anyway, so that seems to be that the Urim V'Tumim failed because they asked, should we go? And twice Hashem said go, and they went and they lost. So Hem shelo bihanu im lenatzech im lehinatzeach. The reason why was because they never asked Hashem, are we going to win or not? They only said, should we go? And so Hashem said, yeah, you should go. But that doesn't mean that they're going to win. But then in the end, when they said, will we this time succeed? And Hashem said, yes, you'll succeed this time. So that time they succeeded. And that actually ties in with one of the interpretations of the story of why they lost the first 2 times, was because they thought that because they had such religious indignation about how bad the people of Binyamin were, that itself meant they were going to win the war without planning, without strategy, without thinking, they were just going to rush in and they're just going to attack them. And they didn't even consider for a moment that maybe they might lose, because they just thought God was going to be on their side. So Hashem said go up against them and said, but he said go up, so we're just going to rush in and we're just going to go. And they didn't use any intelligence. The 3rd time Hashem said go up and you're going to succeed this time. And that time they finally actually used strategy to defeat Bnei Binyamin, and it worked. In any case, Shene'emar u'Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron omed lefanav bayamim hahem. Because it says there that Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, was still alive in those days of the Pilegish B'Giv'ah, and he said, or they said to the Urim V'Tumim, should I again go out to war in Bnei Binyamin achi, against my brother Binyamin? Im ehadalo, should I stop? Vayomer Hashem, alu. Go, because tomorrow I will put him into your hands. In other words, the fact that they considered maybe they were going to lose, finally it occurred to them, maybe we should stop. Then Hashem said, I'm going to let you win. So, ketzad na'aset, how exactly does it work? So Rabbi Yochanan Omer Boletot, the way that the Urim V'Tumim gives its message is that the letters protrude. In other words, the Kohen Gadol sees them as if they're protruding from the Choshen, as if they're protruding from the breastplate. Reish Lakish Omer Mitztarafot. Reish Lakish says that they even combine into words. In other words, the question is it just that the letters come out and he has to decode what they mean? But again, the Kohen Gadol is the only one that sees it, right? He's the one who reads it. Is it that does that actually the words form before his eyes, so to speak? But there's no tzadi. There's no letter tzadi. And if you look on the side, the Gra says v'chet v'kuf. It's also missing chet and kuf. There's no tzadi. There's no chet. There's no kuf in all the names of the Shevatim. There's not. Right? So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak, Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov ketiv sham. They also wrote the name Avraham Yitzchak and Yaakov on the Choshen. So you have the word Yitzchak. Yitzchak has tzadi, it has kuf, right? And it has the chet. So you have all the letters that you need on that side. However, there's still one missing. V'halo ketiv tet. What about a tet? There's no tet in any of the names of the Shevatim or in Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov Shiftei Yishurun ketiv sham. It also says Shiftei Yishurun, the tribes of Israel. So Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the names of the tribes, Shiftei Yishurun, that's enough to have all of the letters that you need. Maybe there is an objection. Kol kohen she'eno medaber b'ruach hakodesh u'shechina shora alav en shoalin bo. It says that any kohen gadol or any kohen who doesn't have divine inspiration, ruach hakodesh, and that the divine presence is not resting upon, cannot ask the Urim V'Tumim. Because Tzadok HaKohen would ask the Urim V'Tumim and he was able to get an answer, but Evyatar did not. Because it says that Evyatar was later relieved of his duty as a Kohen because he wasn't able to use the Urim V'Tumim because he didn't have Ruach HaKodesh. But if it's true what Rabbi Yochanan say and what Reish Lakish say, that the letters protrude from the very Choshen itself, so why does the Kohen Gadol have to have Ruach HaKodesh? I kind of already gave you the answer to this. The answer is Siyue Hava Misayeh Bahadayu, that he helps it. In other words, the Kohen, it's the combination of the Kohen Gadol and the Choshen. He has to be able to see the code emerge, just to have the Ruach HaKodesh to be able to see what the letters are that he's supposed to read. So that's the reason. So one without the other is necessary but not sufficient. You can have a Kohen with Ruach HaKodesh but no Urim V'Tumim. You can have the Urim V'Tumim without Ruach HaKodesh. It's not going to work one without the other. Ve'en sholin ela lamelech, etc. Only certain people are allowed to ask the Urim V'Tumim a question. Let's say you just want to know what the lottery numbers are tomorrow so you can win. You can't do that. Where do we get the idea that only certain people can ask the Urim V'Tumim questions? Amar Rabbi Abba says, because Pasuk says, it says that Yoshua will stand before Elazar HaKohen, and he will ask the judgment of the Urim. Right, it's talking about when Moshe Rabbeinu is choosing his successor, Yoshua, that don't worry, he's going to ask the Urim V'Tumim, etc. Who Zemelech? When it says he will ask, he is referring to Yoshua ben Nun, who was the king, he was the leader. V'chol b'nei Yisrael ito, and it says he and all the Jewish people. Rashi says Misha kol b'nei Yisrael ito latzet lamilchama harav. Anybody who's leading the entire Jewish people after him into war, zeh mashuach milchama. That is the Kohen that is anointed for war. In other words, he's allowed to ask questions of the Urim V'Tumim also. So the leader of the entire Jewish people, the Melech, the Kohen that is going out with the Jews to war because he represents the interests of the entire Jewish people, can also ask. And V'chol ha'edah, it also says V'chol ha'edah, the entire nation, the entire community is allowed to ask the Mishpat HaUrim. Zo Sanhedrin, that means the Sanhedrin is also allowed to summon the Kohen and ask a question of the Urim V'Tumim. So you have a Melech, you have a king, you have the Kohen that is going out to war, and you have the Sanhedrin are allowed to ask questions of the Urim V'Tumim. Nobody's allowed to have, the point is, ask a private matter. You can't have a private consult with the Urim V'Tumim.
So if one of the generals has a question, he's got to go to the...
Let's go to the Kohen that's Mashuach Milchama. And that's why it was considered by David somewhat treasonous that he would ask the Urim V'Tumim questions when Shaul was still the king. Because that was perceived as he was acting like the king. Hadran alach balo kohen gadol, hadran alach ba kohen gadol, hadran alach balo kohen gadol.